Hello everybody, my name is Nemo, and today I've got another deck build video for you guys, up to Mischief. I'm running 23 lands because this is a fast deck. However, I do want to return some creatures to my hand at times and keep counter magic open, so I don't want to not have enough lands to make full use of returning stuff and replaying them in the same turn. So while the mana curve may look like I would want to have like 22 lands, or maybe even, well, I guess 22 lands would be okay. Instead I'm running 23 because there is returning stuff. But hey, 24 would be too much, so that's why we're at 23. So the card, I'm doing something a little different this time around because I'm just going to go through the cards I do include. And then next I'm going to go through the cards I don't include, rather than doing the one cast versus the one cast, etc. as I do. So Fairy Imposter is a 1-cost 2/1 flyer. That's really good. What's the catch? Well, when it enters the battlefield you have to sacrifice it, unless you return another creature you control to its owner's hand. Actually, that may seem bad, but in this deck it's often a plus. You're often happy to return a creature to your hand because a lot of your creatures have come into play effects. And in fact, a lot of counterspells you have are creatures that come onto the battlefield and counter something. So if you return those to your hand, that's really nice. One thing you do want to watch out for is if you have like one guy on the board, you play Fairy Imposter and someone else reacts to it by killing your other guy, then that would be a 2-for-1, because Fairy Imposter goes ahead and sacrifices itself. So be careful of that. Other than that, great card, must include, I think. Another must include, Zephyr Sprite. It's a 1-cost 1/1 flying, and that's basically it. But it's a fairy, and it's cheap, and you get to cast this guy early, and that's really important because your counter magic relies on you having a creature out early. So being able to have a 1-drop is very important, and this is basically your only 1-mana creature that actually can be played turn 1, because this one requires you to have something on the board already. You have Una's Gate Warden for that, but I'll get to why I'm not running that one. So we have unsummons. These are really good in this deck. It is a tempo deck, and being able to unsummon your opponent's creature that they spent the whole turn casting and making them have to recast it, or even just unsummoning one of your own guys just to be able to counterspell something else. I mean, a lot of your guys have flash, so you can unsummon them during your opponent's turn when he tries to kill them, and replay them during their turn as well, and that's just really great. So unsummon is a great card in this deck, definitely. We also have Spellstutter Sprite here. It's a 2-cost 1/1 with flash and flying, and when it enters the battlefield, counter target spell with converted mana cost X or less, where X is the number of fairies you control. So this is one of those counter spells I was talking about. It's also a dude, and that's why it's important to have early creatures, because if you don't have early creatures, if you try and say, well, I've got counterspells in this deck, so let's make it a control deck, that doesn't really work with this deck, because your counterspells are relying on you having actual creatures on board. So you need to make it a tempo deck, and that's what I've done. So that's why I need those early creatures out, so you can take full advantage of the Spellstutter Sprite. And then we've got Briarberry Cohort, 2-cost flying. Oh, by the way, this one counts itself because it enters the battlefield and then it counts how many fairies are on the board. So just thought I'd say that. We've got Briarberry Cohort here, a 2-cost 1/1 flyer, but it gets +1/+1 as long as you control another blue creature. Almost always this guy is going to be a 2/2 because you control blue creatures. Hey, what do you know? It's a blue deck. So we've got Familiar's Ruse here, 2-cost instant. As an additional cost to cast Familiar's Ruse, return a creature you control to its owner's hand, a counter target spell. Another card that makes me return a creature to my hand as a condition to being able to counter something. So I need a creature on the board to be able to counter something turn 2, whether it's through the Spellstutter Sprite or the Familiar's Ruse. Well, if it's a 1-drop, you can just counter it with Spellstutter Sprite. But if the opponent is playing like Exhume on turn 2, then I want to have the Zephyr Sprite down, and I want to be able to cast either a Spellstutter Sprite or a Familiar's Ruse. So that's why it's very important to have early creatures you can play. And having to pick something up with this card, most of the time you're happy because you're picking up like the spell starter sprite again, and now you can cast yet another counter spell. So we have 1 Hands of Binding here. There's 3 in total available to the deck. I'm running only 1. It's a 2-cost sorcery. Tap target creature an opponent controls. That creature doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. And it has Cipher, so you can tap something twice in 1 turn, and then every turn after, as long as you can attack with the creature you ciphered this on, then you can keep tapping something. And given that this whole deck is made up of just flying creatures, it's pretty easy to get this thing to work in this deck. So that's why I'm very happy running it in this deck. We also have Sleep, so I'm also including 1 Sleep. Oop, spoilers! So I don't want to include too many of those types of cards, because if you don't draw the creatures, if instead you draw only these kinds of cards, then there's not a whole lot of point to them. So you only want to include a few of them, but they are very powerful when you do get them. So yeah, 1 Hands of Binding, 1 Sleep. I can see going up to 3 in total with that number for these types of cards, but for now I'm at 2. We've got Wasp Lancer here, a 3-cost 3/2 flyer. He's pretty generic, but he's okay. I mean, a 3-power flyer for 3 mana is usually a discount, so I'm happy with him. And as a bonus, he can't be killed by Doomblade, because he is a hybrid creature, so kind of funny. We've got Scion of Una there, a 3-cost 1/1 flash and flying. Other fairies creatures you control get +1/+1, and other fairies you control have Shroud. It's the lord of this deck, it's the lord of the fairies. I feel like that should be a power metal song. Lord of the fairies, Lord! That didn't sound like power metal at all. I failed. So, anyways, it gives your guys Shroud and can be played at instant speed. So, someone's trying to kill your guy? Well, Scion of Una comes to the rescue. Next turn, someone's trying to kill your Scion of Una? Well, another Scion of Una is coming to the rescue. And if you've got 2 of them out, then they both have Shroud, and everything is Shroud, and life is glorious. So, really good. Sprite Noble is a 3-cost flyer for a 2/2 flyer for 3 mana, and it gives your other creatures +0/+1. Meh. And it can tap and give other creatures you control with flying +1/+0. This isn't the greatest card, honestly. I mostly include it because I want some more early drops, and I couldn't really find another creature to drop early, aside from this Una's Gate Warden. And there's another Illusory Angel in here somewhere, but I just wanted some more early beats that I could actually play, so that's mainly why it's in there. I find it a little bit lacking, but sometimes it's pretty good when you just need that extra damage. But most of the time, you're gonna have like 3 other creatures out there, and one of them is gonna be a lord, and at that point this is a 3/3, so just attacking with it is gonna do the same thing as tapping it, and his ability doesn't really matter that much. So, he's not the greatest, but he deserved the spot in the deck just as another early creature I could play and actually be able to attack with. We've got Vendilion Click here, a 3-cost legendary fairy wizard creature. It's a 3/1 flash flyer, and this creature is actually really good. I think it's pretty expensive in Paper Magic, but when it enters the battlefield, you can look at target player's hand. Note that it doesn't say target opponent, so you can do it to yourself. You may choose a non-land card from it. If you do that, player reveals the chosen card, puts it on the bottom of his or her library, and then draws a card. So, let's see, look at... Yeah, okay, so you don't have to... Alright, so you can, first of all, you can do this to your opponent, pick the best card they have in their hand, and then, they draw a different card, but it's likely not going to be as good as the card you just made them discard. Although they are digging 1 card deeper into their deck, so they're likely going to find their answers faster. But hey, this is a tempo deck, so hopefully you kill them before that matters. But yeah, I mean, just getting their best card out of their hand is really good, especially if they've been like saving up for mass removal or something like that. And this card is great, and you can just wait until their upkeep, or I guess in Duels the Planeswalkers in their main phase, and then cast it just after they've drawn something, and immediately get rid of that card. Although if that's an instant, you kind of want to be careful of that. Another thing you can do with it is target yourself, and get rid of a card that you really don't like to be playing in the particular scenario, and draw a different card and hope you get something good, or at least get closer to whatever card you need to draw. I mean, if the opponent has a better board state than you, then it's likely better to target yourself with this guy. If you have a better board state than the opponent, then it's likely better to target them with this card. And the good news is it only makes you look at target player's hand. So if you do it to yourself, the opponent doesn't get to see your hand. They do get to see the card you put on the bottom of your library, because you have to reveal that card, but that's fine. So yeah, very good card though. And it's a free power flyer for 3 mana that has flash, just really good. Illusory Angel is a free cost flying 4/4, and it's actually not a fairy. This is the only card in the deck that isn't a fairy, aside from its brother or sister, I guess. And you can only cast this one if you've cast another spell this turn. So it does have a drawback for being this big, and it's not a fairy, so it doesn't get Shroud from your fairy lores, you the Scion of Una. So the reason I did include one is because sometimes you just need a bigger creature, and this is the biggest creature this deck has. Unless you want to include Una herself, which is a 6-cost creature. So this one is pretty big for its cost, and sometimes you just need a big one to be able to get by your opponent's bigger blocker. So that's why I included one of these, but I don't want 2 of them, because if you draw both of them, then maybe you don't have something early to play and be able to play an illusory angel with it. So this gets worse the more of them you have, obviously, so only one of them. We've got Pestermite here, free cost, flash flying 2/1 fairy rogue creature, and when it enters the battlefield you may tap or untap target permanent. Very, very, very good card. So one thing that makes this card a whole lot better is that you can use it with Pestermite to make him use his ability twice, or to attack with it, then Pestermite it and make it let it tap again, and that allows you to deal a lot more damage, so that's a nice combo there. But Pestermite is very good on its own. Just being a 2/1 flash flyer is already very good, but being able to tap or untap any permanent you like is just great, because, well, for instance, if you want to play like a 2-drop in this guy and you only have 4 mana, then you can, because you can untap one of your lands when this comes into play and then cast the 2-drop. You can tap one of your opponent's lands during their turn, just, skip to their, or let them get their turn and then immediately play the Pestermite as soon as their lands untap, and tap one of the lands. If they're playing a dual color deck or free color deck, then you can really screw them over with that by tapping the land that they only have 1 of. So that's really, really good. You can also, just tap whatever guy you don't want them to be attacking with, and then they can't attack with it and they can't block with it, because it's still going to be tapped on your turn. I mean, you can untap one of your guys as a combat trick, but actually there's a lot of combat trick potential with this deck, but honestly, you hardly ever get into combat with other creatures with this deck, simply because you don't really care about what your opponent is doing. You're trying to kill them as fast as possible, and your guys are kind of small, so you kind of want to win just by not letting them attack you or not letting them play their spells, and in the meantime smashing them in the air with all these flying dudes and gals. Anyways, Pestermite is just a great card, and we have 4 of those. It's a fun card too. This deck is very fun to play, at least in my opinion. We've got Sower of Temptation here, a 4-cost 2/2 flyer. When it enters the battlefield, gain control of target creature for as long as Sower of Temptation remains on the battlefield. That is a 3-for-1. Yep, because you get a flying dude, and they lose their best guy, and you get their best guy. So that's a 3-for-1. Great. And given that this deck has a bunch of counter magic, you can actually counterspell their removal for this guy. But even if you can't, it's still a great card, because they have to deal with it. If they don't deal with this, then it's just such a huge blowout. And we've got 2 of those. And it can have Shroud when you have Lord out, so very, very nice. We've got Lendra Archmage, a 4-cost 2/2 flyer that can sacrifice 1 blue mana at any time to counter a target non-creature spell. Well, actually not at any time, I'm sorry. There has to be a non-creature spell being cast to be able to sacrifice this, because the targeting is of course part of actually activating it, but I digress. So you can counter a target non-creature spell. So it's either a 2/2 that's flying for you. Maybe the opponent doesn't want to cast their non-creature spell, so you can get to attack with this guy and they don't actually cast their spell. If they do cast their spell, then you can then decide to, oh, I'll go ahead and counter it now. So that's already better than a straight up counter spell to any non-creature spell. But the best part about this card is that it has Persist, which is the opposite of Undying. Rather than coming back with a +1/+1 counter, it comes back with a -1/-1 counter. So it comes back as a 1/1. And then you can counter another non-creature spell, which is just absolutely great. So this is a very good card. Another one of those cards that I believe is pretty expensive in real Magic. And you have a lot of stuff that can let you pick this one up. So if you've used this once, then you can pick it up, play it again, and now you can use it twice more. So yeah, very, very good. Most of the time you're going to be waiting until you actually have 5 mana out before you play this one. And it's one of the main reasons that I'm running 23 lands, not 22. Is that I want to at some point be able to hit 5 mana, play this, and have the have the mana open to actually counter something. So we've also got Sleep here. There's 2 available in the deck. As I said, I'm running just 1, but this is great for this deck. Again, though, you don't want too many of these cards, because if you just get a handful of them, you can't really do much. But this is what you want, because this is a tempo deck, and eventually you're gonna be just like, well, okay, so unsummon your guy this turn, now I'm playing a Pestermite, and following turn I'm countering your guy and replaying my Pestermite after picking it up, and then another turn you're gonna be like Sleep. This way you just stall and stall and stall the opponent while building up your board state, and eventually the Sleep is just gonna make it so you can attack twice, they can't attack back, and you win the game. So that's the idea here. This is your game winner a lot of the time. So very, very good card. I included one of those Hands of Bindings for now. I can definitely see a point to including 2 Sleeps or something like that. For now it's just 2, and it's 1 of each. So the cards I'm not running here, Una's Gate Warden, it has Defender. That's the main reason I'm not running it. Because like I said, I'm trying to not really get into combat with their creatures. I'm trying to instead kill them as fast as possible with my creatures just going for the face. Because my guys are going to be flying, they're flying over their heads. And if they have something with reach, I can probably tap it down. So this is not really what I want, because it is a flyer. On the other hand, it is a 1-drop, so it allows me to cast my counter magic at 2 mana, so I can see the point to running it, but So we've got Diminish here, 1 cost, instant, target creature becomes 1/1 until end of turn. I haven't really needed this card. The main reason why I would imagine you'd want to put this in there is because of, stuff like Champion of the Parish coming out early. Another scenario is if the opponent is playing Unfinished Business and they play, the Imp turn 1, discard a huge bomb from their hand and play Exhume or Reanimate turn 2. Then Diminish can be useful in actually dealing with that, because if they're on the play, then you don't get to counterspell that, because you'll still only have 1 mana out during their second turn. So this is a way of actually dealing with that, but the deck also runs Unsummon, so it's not really needed. And other than that, I don't really want to be getting into combat with my creatures, so using this as a combat trick isn't the greatest idea. And a lot of my creatures have just 1 toughness. I don't really see the point in this deck that much to include Diminish. We've got Hydro Surge here, which is just worse than Diminish. So we've got Hoodwink, 2 cost, instant, return target artifact, enchantment, or land to its owner's hand. This is actually a great card, just for the reason that it, even if they don't have artifacts or enchantments, you can return a land to their hand and just screw them and set them back a turn, basically in what they are able to play each turn from then on. So that's already pretty good. And if they actually get to play some huge enchantment that you were unable to counterspell, then you can actually wait until you draw a counterspell, then Hoodwink that enchantment, and then play the counterspell. So there's some point in playing this, but overall, meh. The really annoying the really annoying enchantments don't come out that early, so I'll have a decent chance of being able to counterspell them. So I don't really need this card, but I do like the potential for screwing someone over by returning a land to their hand before they get to play something on their turn. That's kinda nice. It's a good card, but I couldn't really find room for it. So we've got 2 more Hands of Binding here. I already talked about those. We've got an extra Illusory Angel, already talked about that. We've got Sentinels of Glen Elendra, which is one of the bigger creatures in this deck. It forecasts 2 free Flash Flyer. I just think that the other 4 drops are more valuable to the deck than this one, because it's just a dude basically, so it doesn't really do all that much. We've got Dissipation Field here, forecast enchantment. Whenever a permanent deals damage to you, return it to its owner's hand. In most scenarios in this deck, Sleep is going to be better, so I don't really see the point in running this card. And them being able to replay their guys is sometimes also a benefit to them if their guys have come into play abilities. We've got Psychic Possession, kind of an interesting card. Forecast enchantment aura and it enchants your opponent. That's weird. Skip your draw step. That's bad. Whenever enchanted opponent draws a card, you may draw a card. Huh? So basically it replaces itself first of all, because you draw your card for the turn, then you play this, and then during their turn you get to draw another card during their draw step. So it already replaces itself, but it is a forecast. It's the highest my curve goes, so as a cantrip, I don't really want a forecast cantrip. But then if they actually play some draw spells, then you get the benefit as well, so that's nice. And it does have a combo with a card later in this deck, but this is more a control-y kind of card, and this is not a control deck. So you've got Range of Power, and most of the time I think Sleep is better than this card, because for Range of Power to be worth it, then like all your guys are flyers, right? Especially in this deck, all your guys are flyers, so they are going to be able to block with your guys, all of their guys. So for this to work, you need to have a pretty bad board position, and the opponent has to have a lot of creatures out. And if that's the case, then how did you actually get to deal the other damage you needed to deal for this to be able to finish the opponent off? That's kind of iffy there. I mean, if they just overextend one turn and play a lot of guys, like against Chant of the Moldiah, if they drop Avenger of Zendikar and make it huge, and then you get to Range of Power that and kill them with it, that's kind of nice. But a lot of the time, like, it's gonna be in a situation where you either have too many creatures on board yourself for this to be useful, or you're going to not have a lot of creatures on the board, and as a result, not have dealt them enough damage for this to actually finish them. So, I like Sleep better. We've got Concentrate here, draw 3 cards for 4 mana. Again, it's at the top of your curve. You don't really want to be drawing cards for 4 mana because, well, this isn't a control deck. I'm trying to kill the opponent fast before, they get to actually replay all those guys and make them pick up or tap down or whatever. The longer the game goes, the worse my board position is going to be, because while they've been, playing guys that are actually bigger than my guys, most likely, I've been trying to stall those guys and kill them with flyers. So eventually, the longer the game goes, if I don't get to kill them fast enough, then they're going to be able to overwhelm me with those guys that are bigger than my guys. So I don't want to spend a turn when I'm at 4 mana drawing 3 cards. That seems like a bad idea. Last Thoughts. Most of the time this is going to be worse than Concentrate. You get to draw likely 2 cards the turn you play this, and then another card the next turn. So it's going to catch up to Concentrate pretty fast, but it's in the same boat. We've got Fairy Invaders here, 5 cost, 3/3 Flash Flyer. One of the bigger guys in the deck. But again, no great ability, and it doesn't really matter how big it is, because I'm more interested in stuff that comes down and taps their guy. The 1 extra damage from this versus any 2 power creature isn't gonna make that big of a difference, especially not since I only get to play this later into the game when I'm actually at 5 mana. We've got Switcheroo here, 5 cost, sorcery. Exchange control of 2 target creatures. We actually have 4 of those. That's a little overkill, don't you think? But either way, I don't like the card simply because, well, I could get into a situation where all my creatures have Shroud. because of my lords giving all my creatures Shroud and not be able to use Switcheroo. And also because it's 5 mana and I don't really need to steal my opponent's creatures, I just need to kill them. So, meh. I just need to kill them before it matters that their creatures are bigger. We've got Una here, Queen of the Fae. It's a 6 cost. So I'm already not running it because it's a 6 cost. And because I don't want a 6 cost in this deck. But as a 6 cost, it is pretty good. It is going to win you the game for sure if it's not dealt with. And it's a hybrid blue-black, so Doomblade already doesn't deal with it. So that's nice, I guess. Well, it basically mills the opponent and puts a bunch of 1/1 fairies onto the board that are also immune to Doomblade. So that's nice. But yeah, 6 cost guy. I don't need a 6 coster. We've got mine, and it doesn't do anything the turn it comes into play. That's also very important to realize, because out of my 6 casters, I usually want it to do something when it hits the battlefield. We got Mind Unbound here, 6 cost enchantment, and it lets you draw a bunch of cards. You at the beginning of your upkeep put a lore counter on it, and draw a card for each lore counter on it, and you get to draw consecutively more cards the longer the game goes. But this isn't a control deck. I don't really want this. It's very slow and meh. We've got Forced Fruition, 6 cost, mill the opponent for 7 cards, or at least they get to draw 7 cards. So there's kind of a combo here with Psychic Possession, in that if you've got a Psychic Possession out, then you also get to draw 7 cards. That's a really weird combo, and this isn't the kind of effect you're looking for. These aren't the droids you're looking for. We've got Overwhelming Intellect. It's a 6 cost instant, counter target creature spell, draw cards equal to that spell's converted mana cost. My brain hurts. So again, it's a very expensive card for this deck. That's not really what you want. And what if they play a card that isn't a creature that's going to screw you over and you got nothing to do about it? So yeah, don't like it that much. We've got Stolen Identity. This card is actually a very good game winner, and I definitely wouldn't hate you for running it, but again, it's 6 mana. I don't want the game to last long enough for me to have 6 mana on the board in the first place, so don't really want that card. So that's basically the deck, and we're gonna get into a game with this in the next video, a game or 2 or 3. And my name is Nemo. My name will still be Nemo. Hope you enjoyed this deck build, and if you did, don't be shy, leave me a like, share that love, and I'll see you in the next video.